Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Death Talk Unscripted. I'm the host, Paula Adams, and I just wanted to say thank you for joining me today. It's been a minute since I put up a podcast, and as you know, this podcast is raw and unscripted, and it's just talk. So life has been in the way for a little while with me. For anyone who's not up to my current position of what's going on in my world, as everyone knows, I have a partner who is in congestive heart failure and remission from stage 3 throat cancer. He is currently in palliative care, and life has gotten in the way a little bit from me devoting myself to finding the time to come and share with everyone. But he's the most important person in my world right now, and the universe has seen its way to allow me to have some time to talk to you all. I've had a bit of a bout of, I wouldn't say depression, but I would say a lot of shadows have come up for me lately, and that was part of dealing with it too. So anyway, that's just kind of the essence of, what's been going on for a little while. And today I'm going to speak about something that I have spoken before about, and that is body, the autonomy and the sovereignty of body donation. And in the last few months, my inbox has just been overflowing. Emails and DMs, a lot of whispered questions, after workshops and late night messages. I've gotten them from caregivers, clinicians, and people that, they're just quietly planning their own death. And they're all asking the same thing. And my partner, we just finished up the process for him too. His will be going to the United Tissue Network. And so we just finished out the application, and we got a little certificate that says he's been accepted. And the biggest question I get is, can you talk about body donation? Is it really free? Is it safe? Why are so many people choosing it now? And is this my only option if I can't afford a burial or cremation? So these are the questions that I get most asked about the application when wanting to do body donations. There's a whole another side which comes into the family and friends circle and having the talk with the family. A lot of times it may not line up with what the family has foreseen that would be happening to your body after death. But that's a whole nother podcast, perhaps one right after this one. So anyways, the volume, like I said, of these questions, it just tells me, a story that, people just, that people are just scared, the statistics, and people are overwhelmed, and people are trying to make sovereign choices in a system that just keeps stripping that sovereignty away. And more than anything, I think people are trying to understand why body donation, once a quiet, almost hidden choice, has become one of the most talked about end-of-life options in America, next to the concept of medical aid in dying. So this podcast, like I said, is my response to all the questions and to all of you. So let me just go ahead and start there. There is a quiet revolution that's happening in America, one that almost no one, like I said, talks about. It's reshaping the landscape of death care, of science, medicine, and the meaning of autonomy itself, really. More and more people are choosing the whole body donation as an alternative to a casket burial or the rising cost of cremation. We all know that the cost of burials have risen exponentially. COVID also set that in motion. And we also know that even cremation, which was once one of the most low-cost options for end-of-life choices, has now become a larger market. Therefore, the prices have increased, and by demand, supply and demand. Some choose it out of conviction. Some choose it out of necessity, and we should understand that those are two very different reasonings. One is conviction and one is necessity. And by the definition, one is you're looking at it as this is what I have and this is the only option I have, and it's a necessity for whatever money, whatever the stressor is. And then you have the conviction, which is this is something that you have thought on a morally, on a spiritual, on, it's been carrying with you and you have wanted to do this end of life choice. It was always your go-to from the beginning. Many choose it, like I said, because it aligns with, your values. Perhaps their worldview even comes into it. Or a lot of times people leave something behind that they consider to be meaningful. For instance, my partner, he's having his body donation, and part of it is out of necessity. He was a veteran, and he chose not to have the veterans memorial service and be placed into the ground. He just wasn't interested in a burial for the end of life choice. If the state that he was living in had medical aid in dying, then he would do that. But hospice will probably be his course that he takes. But the end of life choice that he's chosen is body donation, not organ donation, simply body donation. He has a DNR and a DNI, and I will explain those again. That's getting off into stuff that we haven't even started. So his has been the United Tissue Network, like I said, and he has specific reasons for the body donation. His cancer, his thyroid was radiated at a very young age, and he'd also like them to study his heart and why it crashed. So it's always been something on his mind. Plus he suffered from mental health with a few issues, and he'd like them to study his brain to see if they can come any closer to helping with mental health issues. Some of it choose because they simply cannot afford the death they truly want. And that, I guess, is the final blow that I wanted to get out there. I wanted to let you know that my partner, he had a conviction, but it is also for him a form of necessity that we look at financially, especially in this day and time, especially with the climate of the United States the way it is in 2026, and of course the way it has turned the tide for senior citizens and the cost of living, and what baby boomers had planned for in their retirement is now easily being sucked up for their health care. But beneath all these reasons lies one truth. Body donation is an act of sovereignty. It is a final declaration of autonomy, a choice that belongs to the dying person alone. Let me say that again. Body donation is an act of sovereignty, a final declaration of autonomy, a choice that belongs to the dying person alone. Why is body donation rising in America? The numbers tell a story that our culture is not quite caught up with. Between 14,000 and 20,000 Americans donate their body to science each year. I know that doesn't seem a lot in the midst of 324, 23 million people, an estimate, of course, of what the United States has, population-wise. But even though it's less than 1% of all U.S. deaths, it's steadily rising as awareness grows through podcasts, through my Substack platform that I run. I talk about it on my Facebook. I talk about it on TikTok. I mean, it is rising, and awareness grows. And as traditional funerals costs become unattainable for a lot of families, it's just hard to meet that $12,000 to $15,000 starting price. And a lot of families are starting to question too, why? So some programs have seen donations double or triple. And collectively, the U.S. programs now receive over 26,000 whole body donations annually. So that is how much it is being brought into the conversations. Is it sitting at the big boy table yet? No, it's still sitting at the kiddie table, so to speak. But it's got its table and it's got people listening. And this is not a small shift. It's really a cultural pivot if you think about it. The reasons why people are choosing body donation is because, like I've stated, burial costs have become prohibitive. Cremation prices continue to rise. Families cannot absorb sudden financial loss. And people want their death to serve a purpose. They want to reduce an environmental impact. That is also a key player in this. The reduction of environmental impacts that we want. That is one of my key things for me wanting to do my body donation. And that was up there in the number 3 slot for me. They want autonomy over their final act. That was number 2. And it's not really just about economics. For, like I said, for some people, it most definitely is. But for the majority of people that have thought about it or are thinking about it and planning to do it, sometimes the economics don't play in it at all. They could be the richest person in the world. This is sovereignty, in my opinion, and it defines it quite well. The final reality that no one wants to admit is, like I said, traditional burial costs can cost anywhere from $9,000 to $15,000 or more. That's a lot of money for people, again, in this time era that we're going through. Cremation, I remember cremating my mom for, I don't know, $597 or something like that. And they gave us a little place to do a ceremony and a picture of her and some flowers. We got her urn was beautiful. And we did this for the religious side of the family that we had. So for many Americans, these numbers just aren't possible. Body donation, and hear me out, body donation, by contrast, it's often free. Free transportation, cremation, and return of the ashes are typically covered by the program. So you can see the value. You can see the purpose in possibly choosing body donation as a leading contender for an end-of-life choice for the body. This means that for thousands of families, body donation isn't just a choice, it is a lifeline. And it ends up with the findings and everything from the body. It does go to teaching and education, and it does go to research, and it is the way that we open up to moving forward in the medical industry that we as human beings so dearly need. But here's the deeper truth, in my opinion. Choosing body donation because you cannot afford anything else is still an act of autonomy. You cannot take that away. Excuse me. You cannot take that away from anyone. And so I just want to say that again. Choosing body donation because you can't afford it or can't afford anything else is still an act of autonomy. But it's also a reflection for me of a system that has failed the dying. Our death care system in this country just blows my mind, the lack of it. There are so many gaps. We don't have enough little Dutch boys to put fingers in all the holes and keep the dam from breaking. It's breaking. It's already cracked and leaking. What this surge means for science and medicine, what these body donations and all this truly means for this culture is it goes to medical schools, like I said, research institutions, training programs that rely on donated bodies to teach anatomy, develop surgical techniques, and advance medical innovation. It's also, too, about perhaps leading into a new and ethical form of the medical industry and perhaps even medical school. Perhaps we might learn to incorporate this in some sort of death care with the bodies, body washing, the cleansing, the that kind of stuff. Just an option, just an idea that pops through. Even with the rising numbers, demand still outpaces supply in many regions. More accurate medical training, better surgical outcomes, of course, more research into disease. There's also, here's another question that sometimes it raises. What happens when body donation becomes the default because people can't afford to die any other way? That's a good question. There are several more that I'd like to throw in there. What does it mean when autonomy and economic pressure collide? Why does body donation, why body donation really is an autonomy choice? Body donation is one of the few end-of-life decisions that it can't be overridden by family in most states. It reflects a person's values worldwide and legacy. It's rooted in their personal sovereignty, if nothing else. This allows the dying person to define the meaning of their own death, and it is the dying person's the most important person in the room, so that's absolutely the way that if that's how they want to define the meaning of their own death, then like I said, most of the times even families can't intercede in that. It is a choice, in my opinion, that says my body, even in death, is still mine. And I guess for many, it's the most sovereign act they will ever make. I know it will be for me. A lot of times people ask me how families react and why it matters, and why their matters reactions are so varied. Some families are actually relieved, I have found. So a lot of them feel very proud once the program has been explained and it's been in the death conversation and people have come to the table to listen. Sometimes there are people who will still feel confused or unsettled. A lot of times I've come across people who feel betrayed because they were not consulted before it was done. Again, not about you, about the dying person and how they want their autonomy and sovereignty to take place. Some resist the idea because they can't imagine a death without a body present, without, something as a 3D world object. But, y'all, the truth is, families do not have to like the choice. They only have to honor it. And that's what autonomy is about. That's what sovereignty is about, in my opinion, is you don't have to agree with it or like it, but you do have to honor it. They're the dying person. Why better education and better death care must accompany body donation? Okay. If donation is going to continue rising in America, then the systems surrounding it would only make sense that they must rise too. This is not just about the act of a donation. It's about the entire arc, in my opinion, of care. From the moment a person dies to the final return of their ashes. That's the arc. And if the dying person truly has autonomy and sovereignty, then honor it. Right now, too much of that arc is fragmented, in my opinion. It's rushed or hidden behind institutional walls, I guess is the best word I can say for that. The medical industry is one. Another one, the funeral homes. How about transport teams? And even some donation programs often operate in silos. So families are kind of left confused, like I was saying earlier. A lot of time rituals are interrupted. Communication can break down. And the dignity of the donor, the sovereign human being who made this choice, it's not always centered. This is where education becomes essential, my friends. It becomes essential. Medical professionals, you need better training in death literacy. That's just it in a nutshell. I can't say it any plainer, and I said it as kind as I possibly could. And not just in the science of death, but in the humanity of it, in how to speak to families, and how to honor the donor's choice, and how to treat the body with reverence, not as a clinical object. Funeral professionals, I've got a few words for you. You need cleaner standards and more transparency. Families deserve to understand what body donation really means. what the timeline looks like, and how to create ritual even when the body is not present. This is possible. This is ancient ways. This is, this is something that absolutely is out there, and it's just a matter of educations. What can the donation programs do? You must communicate more openly and be seen more. And don't do it with the sterile emails or vague timelines, but give clarity, compassion. Respect the emotional weight of this choice that these dying people are signing up for. Body donation isn't just a transaction to a lot of these people. It is really a rite of passage, don't you think? And every rite of passage deserves care. What does better death care actually mean? Honoring the donor's sovereignty, supporting the family's grief. How about ensuring ethical handling of their remains? How about creating space for ritual and closure? Acknowledging the donor's contribution to science and medicine. Imagine what that new sphere would look like. Imagine what that new kind of ideology would do. I mean, it would, for me, in this time and age, it would just, it's one step closer to revolutionary, reforming, remaking, redesigning what we call the healthcare industry, the death care industry, the living industry, the whole industry form. If body donation is really going to grow, and it will, I promise you, you haven't even begun to see the surge yet. There are 55 million more baby boomers on their way, to the dying phase, not to mention just your everyday deaths. Then I guess the systems around it must grow in integrity, transparency, and humanity. We cannot forget about our humanity. Otherwise, I guess we're repeating the same patterns that have already fractured modern death care. Body donation is a powerful choice. It deserves a powerful, ethical, ritual-rooted response. Another question I get asked is, will body donation become a go-to option? I'm speaking as of today in 2026. As the current rate of growth, body donation is posed to become one of the most common end-of-life choices in the next decade, and that's my opinion, along with the amount of baby boomers that we have lining up in the next decade or two to enter into the death care in final stages of life. People ask me why I think that. Well, I gave you one really good reason. The other one is land scarcity. We're running out of land to put cemeteries, and that's the truth. Funeral inflation I've discussed, environmental concerns we've discussed, medical demand, cultural shifts toward practicality and purpose. What else? As cemeteries fill and cremation becomes less affordable, body donation may become not just an option, but it may become the leading number one necessity. I get this a lot too. You hear all kinds of conspiracy theories and crazy TikTok and stories that pop up. Does body donation have a dark side? And I'm going to be honest with you. This is Death Talk Unscripted, right? Yes. And pretending otherwise only fuels misinformation. Everything that we have, every program, every system that human beings have built, they all have a dark side. Every one of them. This dark side includes unregulated brokers, misuse of remains, families not understanding the process, media sensationalism, fake news about body trafficking. There's lack of transparency in some of these programs. Call them out. Let's flush them out. But the solution isn't fear. The solution is education, like I'm doing now. It's regulation. It's transparency. The environmental impact. It's a quiet victory. I know it may not be on the top of the list for a lot of you people listening out here, but it is a very quiet victory if you think about it, for nature, for the world, for Earth, for the next generations. Body donation has one of the lowest carbon footprints of any end-of-life option, by the way, just throwing it out there so everybody has it. There's no embalming chemicals, there's no casket manufacturing, there's no land use. There's really no cremation emissions either. It is in many ways the most ecological choice available. The sovereignty of the final gift of body donation, it's just not a financial decision. It's just not a scientific contribution, people. It's not just a practical alternative. It is a sovereign act. And I keep repeating this. It's sovereignty and autonomy. It's a declaration of autonomy, a final offering, a choice that says, let my death serve the living. Let my body teach. Let my leaving matter. In a culture that has forgotten how to die well, body donation is one of the few places where autonomy still stands unbroken. And my friends, that matters. So I'm going to close right there. I just gave you a ton of information to process, and that's about my time now before I have to get back to the 24/7 caregiving aspect. Thank you all for joining me today. My next podcast that will be coming out, we will be talking a little bit more about body donation, and perhaps we'll throw in some real realities of what the end-of-life care looks like in America. Again, to everyone out there, thank you so much for joining me. Be well. Namaste. So much love.